Hello.
Hello. So I see, oh, hey, yes, I can hear you now. I'm Steve. Can you hear me? No.
I can hear you.
Oh, you can. Great. What was your name?
My name's Alan.
Alan. Nice to meet you.
There's a bit of a lag, I think.
Yeah, it sounds like it. That's not good. Where are you?
I'm in California.
Oh, cool. Like Jonathan. I'll try switching to a better internet maybe.
Oh, it's probably mine. I'm out in the country.
I see. Yeah, I guess that'll do it. I wonder how this upvote system is going to work out. Very rudimentary.
You know, there's actually some kind of poll feature in Zoom, I think. You can bring
Cool.
a poll on something if you want to have a decision.
That's cool. Hi, Benny. I don't know if you could hear me, but I can't hear you. I'm just saying hi.
Okay, Steve, I just made you the
Yes.
host of, that means maybe you can record now.
I still don't see that button. But it says recording in the top left corner for me, so I don't think there's anything else I need to do. Hey, Mark and Nick, welcome. Hello, Aiden.
Hey, Steve, how you doing, man?
Doing well. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. How's everything over the pond?
Doing well. It's a little dark. No worse for the wear.
Very nice.
Are you back in California now, or are you on the East Coast?
I'm in the East
Where
Coast
are
right
you?
now, but I'm back in Cali next week. I'm dreading going though because the TSA has been closed, so I don't know how easy it's going to be to get over there.
you live in one of these wacky countries, these wacky newfangled countries. They don't know how to work their government.
Yeah. So says the man who escaped like 2 months ago.
Well, I'm in a country. I'm in the oldest continuous country now, or the oldest continuous running government, I think.
We're about to make a mess of that.
That's true. That's true. That's true. That's true.
Great way to start off a meetup about programming. Went right to politics. Good on us.
As long as I don't mention any politician name by name, I think we're safe. Just snide references.
Okay, hello everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, for some reason the video isn't working on my laptop, but yeah, at least I can see you and can hear you.
Great. Welcome, Felix.
Folks, hi folks.
Hi, David.
I'm speaking to Steve Krause for the first time. How exciting. I just saw a bunch of your Twitters
Yeah.
and blog posts. Thought they were cool, you know.
Thanks.
Actually, I wish I could have read more of them, but I've been so busy. I wonder what everybody's doing is, everybody has a day job. I mean, who's working on this sort of thing full time? They're probably going to hear that.
I wish.
I'm not, but I don't have a day job either at the moment. I'm a contractor, and I don't have a contract currently.
Oh, I got video. Great.
Oh, nice. I'm surprised when every new person joins. So many people.
I was lucky to find out about this because usually I don't. I mean, I often don't check my email every day, and it's like anything that comes in with less than 4 days notice, yeah, I might miss it.
I'm impressed that the technology worked first time. That was unexpected, but impressive.
Yes. Well, we have to thank Jonathan Edwards for the use of his Zoom account.
Oh, professional.
Yeah, apparently. And in case you don't see, I don't know what we'll do with it. I think we'll just release anyone can listen to it if they want. So only say things that you want.
And hence the comment about staying away from politics.
Yes, good idea. I was going to say that if you can change your name, like the name you typed in, to what you want to be called, that'd be great. Because I think some of you put in like usernames, which is fine. But I just it could be helpful just for ease of talking. I think most of us are fine. Wow, 17. That is so many people.
I like how Duncan has a cat.
Nice. That is very cool.
He'll be back again tomorrow.
Cool. Oh, cool. So that's 5 minutes. So I guess we can get started. Well, welcome everybody. Thanks so much for showing up to this random experiment. I hope it goes well. I guess you've probably already read the format section of how I hope this goes. But I'll just go over it real quick. The call's recorded, so be careful what you say. I originally made the doc comment only, but I just changed it to anyone can edit it. So hopefully we won't run into any trouble with that. I don't know. I still see people's suggestions coming in as comments. So I don't know. Maybe that didn't take effect. I like the idea of collaborating on this, as like when others are talking, if you want like to add things but not interrupt them, feel free to somehow put your thoughts in the doc so other people can see them and respond to your thoughts without interrupting the main thread. It's annoying. There's 17 of us, but only one person can talk at a time. So anyways, hopefully this will help with that.
There's also a chat log.
Well, yeah, I would like it if we didn't use the chat log, just because I want the notes to persist. But I guess the fact that this is being recorded means that we could use a chat log. Then anyway, either way, whatever you want to do, we'll figure it out. Okay, so just overview and like the point of this meetup is, as silly as it sounds, I think the most important part of these sorts of things is link sharing. At least when I've done this in the past, I find that humans are really good at listening to the words I'm saying and then coming up with these free associations for whole different topics I never would have found without the human there to do the free association. So as people are talking, please put the links to whatever they are saying makes you think of, where they can find them later. And so that would be great. Warm feelings, like, doing this kind of work is kind of lonely. So if hopefully this will make you feel less alone. That's the second purpose. And then the last purpose is collaboration. Most of us like to have our own little pet projects and we work alone. And so I haven't seen any collaboration come out of meetups like this, but I guess in theory that could happen and that would be cool. So
maybe a topic should be, why is it that we don't collaborate more? Is it that we're not having in-person meetups? We shall see.
Yeah, I put that down in topics. That's a wonderful idea. Yeah, as topics come up that you want to, or questions, just put them in the topics, and hopefully people will upvote those. And by the time we're done with the introduction, which might take a while, like 20 of us, then we'll get to them. I personally would be thrilled if we just spent the whole time doing introductions, because I think we're all weird and interesting in different ways, and I'm just kind of curious who everyone is. So we'll see. So that's what I have to say. Any questions or comments before we move on to introductions? Cool. Awesome. Okay, so I guess I'll go first. I guess we'll just go in the order of the doc, because why not? So I'm Steve. My story is that I was a Seymour Papert kid, in that I did logo and I fell in love with programming and it changed my life. I became a mathematical thinker and it was a big deal for me. So then a couple years ago, I was inspired by that experience to start an after-school program. We taught kids to code in New York City for a couple years. While there, I made a programming language, a JavaScript framework called Wolf.js, which was highly inspired by Logo and also Brett Victor's Learnable Programming essay. That's kind of where I started in the headspace. While over the past couple of years, I made a few prototypes. A lot of them were block-based. I made blocks for jQuery, blocks for Vue.js, and I worked on a projectional editor for JavaScript for a couple months. But eventually, I found my way back to the original work on functional reactive programming by Connell Elliott, and so I've been kind of really inspired by that work in the past year or so. Yeah, and I'm currently working on visualizing that paradigm and making it easier for normal people, because it's notorious for being hard to understand. And I do a podcast and community organizing stuff like this, and I am mentored by Jonathan Edwards, who is this way in the call for me, but maybe he's somewhere else for you. All right. David, you're up next.
David by now. Well,
Yes.
I started Loic, Language of Your Choice project, and I wanted to make this compiler that would let you express a program as a combination of several programming languages. And the idea was the compiler would compile all the programming languages and sort of understand all of them and link them together into one program. Then I got away from that idea for a while because I was like, I also wanted, at the same time, I had this idea like that one of the languages should be super special. It should be like the best, extensible. You'd be able to add new features to it, new syntax and everything. I made this unit checker, like a unit inference engine, sort of a type checker for units like meters and bytes and yards per second or whatever units you might have. And I added it to a language called Boo, and the Boo authors just ignored it. They had no comments, when I put on their mailing list. They had nothing to say. They're like, well, okay, whatever. I mean, they didn't say anything. So, so how do I, if I make a feature for a programming language, how do I actually get it into the language? That's a problem. I think that it should be more democratic, and people should just be able to add features. So I got to work on that question. How do you make a language where people can just add features to it? And I didn't really solve that. That's a really hard problem to do in general. I think there's a bunch of features you can add that would help in a lot of different situations. And I want to do more research into that and experimentation, but I've always had a day job and it's been difficult. So anyway, there's a lot more. There's links in my description and stuff. And I made a language. I made a couple of textual languages called LES once I designed a derivative of S expressions called. I mean, it's sort of inspired by S expressions, but it adds more features. It's called Loic trees. And that's the in-memory format. It's called Loic trees. And then there's LES, Loic expression syntax, which is a textual format. Actually, I designed a couple of textual formats. So you guys can decide which one is better. I guess that's enough to say for now from me. Unless questions?
Cool. I think if you have questions or comments, just put them in a doc and maybe we'll kind of circle back to them or put them in the topics maybe, and we'll just kind of keep going person to person. Next is Humberto.
Hey guys, I'm sorry, I'm just running around trying to escape my daughter who's chasing me. So I'm an electrical engineer from Porto, Portugal, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Dash Dash, which I've already maybe too much advertised, maybe overly advertised. That is kind of like a mixture of a Google Sheets with an actual programming language. What it means is that we try that every cell is a single computer, logical computer. So each cell has its own memory, persistence, logic functions, I/O, and lots more things. Each cell can access front-end and back-end computing resources, and therefore you can use a combination of those to create pretty nifty stuff. It's the challenge has always been due to the fact that there's at least from my intuition, two classes of problems which traditional engineering approaches don't really solve. One of them is rapidly changing applications. So if you have an application with lots of changing requirements, it's very hard to have a dedicated team changing them frequently. So it's better that someone, the user, in theory, actually has the power of changing those. And the other one is the problem of inheritance of code and structure, right? So if you have a small problem inside a company, you have this big trunk, let's say in e-commerce, right? They have their own e-commerce suite, and there's lots of teams developing that. But marketing and operations and H&R and finance, they have their subsets of problems, which are also many times computational problems, which if someone does create a tool for them, then there's no one to actually sustain it and improve it and maintain it in the long term. And so I always ended up at we need a solution for end users. And what is the tool that end users already use to manipulate things that look like programming? and that is obviously spreadsheets. There's roughly 1 billion spreadsheet users out there. Microsoft Excel has between 750 million and 800 million users, and Google Sheets now has around 300 million plus, and that's it. We'll launch in 2 weeks. If any of you want an activation key, just go to dash.com and put yourselves in there and say that you're in futureofcoding.org with Umberto, and you will be rapidly moved through the waiting list. I'm very, very glad that Steve started this. So thank you, Stephen.
My pleasure. Cool. Next is Vlad, if he's here. He's on my screen.
1, 2, 3. Is it on?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Vladimir. Obviously, I'm from Russia. Well, I know I learned programming early and always was curious about programming languages and tried to learn as many as possible to, just understand, learn more about expressivity and everything. At some point, of course, I wanted to create my own language, then realized that it doesn't make sense because it has to be really good to be adopted, and it should really solve some real pain that people have to be used. Yeah, and I didn't clearly saw the problems that people have. Then I stumbled upon Brett Victor's talks, and I really got, let's say, contaminated by this vision. Yeah, and then I tried to create a trace visualizer for Erlang programs that tries to display visually the traces from execution. So basically could see how program executed in the past. Try to invent something easier than textual logs. I tried that. For now, I stopped. Right now, I'm just working my ordinary job, trying to prepare to enroll to university, to become an academic, and try to research this future of coding from academic perspective. So for now, I'm not actively working on anything yet. Just listening to you guys and try to sketch some ideas. That's it.
Cool. I think Tim's up next.
Yeah. Is my microphone working? No. Okay. Hold on. You can hear me? Okay, good.
Yeah.
So I work at Google. I've been lurking in this Slack and, listening to the podcast and everything since Strange Loop last year. I'm going to try to be a little more active now because I worked with my manager to carve out a proper 20% project from an open source thing I released last year. So I'm going to try to work on that more. Yeah, originally that was just an app to help me make animations that had the bare minimum of what Brett Victor would describe as, being native for the medium of computers. So my hobby's making pixel art, animations there, and I'm a computer programmer too. So I know how to make video games, but on my spare time, I don't really have the energy to do that when I've been coding all day at Google. And so I started this. I was just thinking of it as an app to make Markov chain style animations. But after Strange Loop and talking to folks in this group, I think I can reframe that as a domain specific language for making more dynamic my big interest for attending is actually that, what was it, the first guy, Loic, having kind of a universal abstract syntax tree or graph could be really neat to sort of bootstrap the project I'm working on.
Ooh. Who's next? If you see your name is next, don't wait for me to introduce you. Feel free to go. I think now it's Alan.
Excuse me, my name is Alan. My day job, I work as an embedded systems programmer, doing video hardware. Yeah, I noticed in the notes a lot of people who are focused on languages, textual languages, but I'm working in a different medium. I'm trying to work in things like the grid cells and place cells in the brain, and trying to leverage that aspect of what VR provides is experimenting, trying to find out what works and what doesn't. Yeah, I mean, I'll produce the floor to everybody else. I'm kind of outlier here, so if anybody has questions, we can talk about it later.
I don't know. It doesn't sound that outlierish to me. Maybe we need to learn more about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think at this point, I'm feeling a lot like I did when I first heard that computers or anything could be programmed, was like trying to understand something that I don't fully understand and trying to learn some new aspect. And I'm just grasping at straws, trying experiments to see, do things like visualizing Lisp data structures in 3 dimensions, also trying to create sort of inception-like context where you're at a high-level context, you're at high-level abstractions, and then you zoom in to an object, and then you're inside that, and eventually at ground truth, it gets down to code. And how do you span those levels of abstraction so that other people can come in and participate in one thing that I like a lot is Conway's law, which is, we're constrained to building systems that reflect our communications and things like power structures and other things. But, how we communicate affect what we build. So so I'm following Meetup, which is a machine intelligence company in the Bay Area, and that trying to get some ideas from how they see how humans understand abstractions in the brain. So just reading papers from them, things like that. So I'll talk to you later.
Cool. So I believe I'm next. And can everyone hear me?
Indeed.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm the outlier here because I'm in Australia, and I think I'm the only person. So if I'm dropping out, that's probably why.
What time is it there?
It is 8 a.m. or it was 8:30. I believe the time of this conference call is actually set because I said I couldn't get up any earlier. I pretty much wrote my bio in the document, but I can sort of repeat that out loud now. So basically, I studied computer science. Most people, I guess, who are here, although there may be exceptions. Yeah, I originally learned to code writing video games in a crappy scripting language. I eventually figured out real programming languages. I was sort of upset with the state of them. And so then I went on to do some research. I did an honors thesis on visualizing functional programs, visualizing their execution. So I basically took an execution trace and tried to make a diagram that helped you explore what happened during the execution. But that turned out really bad because that was just sort of running on intuition. I did some other things, got some jobby stuff since then. I started a PhD about 18 months ago on something completely unrelated. And I've quit that now, so that's not happening anymore. But that was a fun side adventure. So at the moment I have lots of free time and I'm coming back into this future programming type stuff. And seeing what's new and trying to work out if there's anything that, well, I want to contribute to. And I actually have found a project called Hazel recently, which I'm actually excited about. It's basically a new programming language and editor in one. So you can write code and it will execute immediately. And so some of the novel things about Hazel is that, and forgive me, anyone from like the Hazel team who finds this video on the internet at some point, it's pretty much, it's formally specified so that anything you write will be able to run, even in incomplete programs. So if you're typing some code and it's not finished yet, you can still execute it, and all the parts that are finished will show you results. So for example, if you're running code and for some reason there's a list of 5 elements and 4 of them have enough code to give you the answer, you'll get the answer, and the 5th one will be blank, and it'll tell you exactly what hasn't been computed and stuff like that. And so there's a few other things, actually quite a few other things going on with Hazel as well, but that's sort of at least a glimpse into what it's like. I don't think I have anything else to say right now, so.
Okay, so I think this means that I'm next. Oh, is there a question?
No, oh, sorry, Felix.
Okay, all right. So I think my story is probably similar to the ones of most of you guys. Actually, I think my first motivation into this future of coding thing started when I was trying to teach a friend how to code, and suddenly realized how much more difficult it is than it needs to be. Because from my perspective of knowing how to program for several years, I had a very simple model in my mind, but explaining all the little bits and pieces was really difficult. And this was probably the point where I started thinking about, okay, how can we make it easier, with the ultimate goal of actually allowing more people to use computers for more advanced things. And since then, I've been looking into all different kinds of things you could do. I've been reading in the Slack a lot, and it's a great amount of ideas you can check out. Right now, I'm actually starting with my master thesis, and it's going to be about pattern matching with source tree nodes. You can think about this like writing a regex, but not for linear text, but for a part of an abstract syntax tree. I just started 2 weeks ago, so there's not anything to show. But I think this could be really interesting. Other than that, there's not much to show right now. And I'm mostly here to hear what you guys are up to. And yeah, thank you for organizing this.
Okay, well, I think I've probably got a good claim for being the furthest outlier, for obvious reasons, because I'm a business analyst and not a developer, and for no other reasons. Not a programmer, or at least don't code these days, although I have in the past. I'm interested in cock-ups. I'm interested in where things go wrong between sort of round the outside of the code. Wrong in terms of something not being useful or it not being correct. As far as I'm concerned, I've already got masses out of this meeting simply from the original document. I've got lots to go away and find out more about. But I am interested in how, but basically making things work better, making things more useful. So the stuff about communications that and at least one of the other entries I was looking at and going, yes, that. How basically how do we do more useful things and do them better? So that's me.
I bet lots of us want to figure out how to make it easy for people who don't usually program to just make things.
Yes, and even where that's not possible, make it easier for them, for whatever it is they need or their ideas, to turn into reality, because that's my experience has been that's where an awful lot of things go wrong, either there or in the well, yeah, we knew what we were supposed to do, but we didn't. It didn't work. We didn't get it right.
I wonder how much of it is human nature. Like, it's hard for people who are highly technical to communicate. I mean, because I think that humans aren't naturally good at teaching unless you have a talent for teaching. And essentially, if you're explaining something to someone who knows a lot less than you, then that's a teaching task.
Again, Alan's comment about how, if I've understood it correctly, how people communicate is quite relevant there. Yeah, how much is nature? How much is nurture? Well, it's an area I'm interested in.
Hi there, my name is Duncan, and the cat is called Fluff Nugget, if she wanders back in frame. So I think I got my start with Logo back in the day as well. It didn't make much of an impression to me. It was like in primary school when we had a turtle that ran around the floor. But yeah, 30 kids can't all play with the turtle, so it was more of a spectator sport. I think where I got going was BBC Micros and playing around with the source code of the games that came with it back in the day. And I think once I found the set pixel command, I was off and away. That and a for loop, and I could draw anything and start making games. So I think in terms of this, I've spent a lot of time building tools for engineers, and it seems only a matter of time until your tool for an engineer needs to support some sort of end user computation. So in the past, I've made things like forecasting servers for predicting the weather, and after a while that turned into a data flow language for combining different prediction models and data cleaning in sort of real time. Built hardware in the loop testing tools for testing things like wind turbine controllers, and after a while those, for sort of test automation, they earn themselves a programming language. And tools like wind farm design software, after a while that required a scripting engine, so people could mass add thousands of wind turbines, because in England you might build a wind farm with 5 turbines, but in China you'd build a wind farm with 1,000 turbines. So I've always had an interest in the type of Brett Victor topics, but the project I'm working on is called Thorny. It's an interactive notebook for decision making. And to me, it's precisely the same problem as future of coding. The difference is that my end goal isn't to produce a piece of software, it's to produce decisions and designs, really, or strategies. So not just necessarily small decisions, but large connected decisions that might be considered high-level strategy or a design of an engineering product. So it works with effectively a knowledge graph instead of an AST. And that knowledge graph is very similar to a functional reactive programming graph of functions, so that instead of a function, it's a decision. So if somebody changes the reasoning inside a decision, then the consequences ripple through the knowledge graph, very much like a functional reactive programming language, very much like spreadsheets. So it's a bit like a notation for reasoning. So there's a few different types of programming language involved at different levels. And I don't know whether anyone else is sort of hard at work trying to build these sorts of tools, but it does feel like boiling the ocean. So I'm great to have a bit of a support network where I'm sure we can also empathize with how difficult it can be. So that's why I'm here.
Hey everyone, Mark. I'm a researcher at Ink and Switch, which is an industrial research lab. And the short idea there is there's a huge amount of investment and work in computing these days around the attention economy, things like games and advertisements, as well as enterprise software, things like Salesforce, which is all well and good. We feel like we've kind of lost the plot on like the classic things computers were great at, like helping people have great ideas, be creative, make amazing things. And so we wanted to bring some people together to work specifically on that. And we work all up and down the stack. So there's like user interface level research, systems and architecture level research, as well as some work on programming languages and programming environments. So that's what brought me here. And this other kind of at the meta level, I'm also thinking a lot about how you enable this type of work. What are the institutions, the communities, the funding models, and so on that you need? That's another thing that we're testing with this lab. So it's also of interest.
Hey everyone, I'm Aiden. I've actually been starting companies in this space for a little while. First I did DropSource, which was a mobile app development platform, visual programming language. And I'm actually working on a new company now called Optic, which we just finished in YC. I had like a kind of like crazy, 180 I did. I was trying to build like greenfield languages originally with the first company. And what I realized is there's like, it's really hard to get dev tools going. And I've talked to a lot of entrepreneurs who have had trouble getting them, off the ground and then getting usage. And I realized there's this really interesting boundary between the messy existing systems and like these new ways of programming. And basically what we're trying to do at Optic to start is do static analysis and work into people's pipelines and help them solve real business issues they're having today by automating some code that they're doing. And to do that effectively, you really have to just interoperate with existing systems. So it's a really interesting area. We're still learning a lot and like figuring out the best approach. But what I'm spending a lot of my like meta time on now is figuring out like the order of operations to get not just companies to adopt new programming tools, but how to like get the market and a group of contributors to also start working on these things. And I think I haven't like codified it all yet, but I think I'm learning a lot from talking to people. And there are very real ways to make these work commercially if you start them and solve the right problems in the right order. So that's sort of what I've been spending most of my time on. And it's great to hear from everyone in the community and all the cool stuff you guys are doing.
Hey, so I'm Dev, and I agree. I've been a real fan of the podcast and just like seeing all you guys' introductions and posts and stuff like that. So I come from a computer science and HCI background, but I taught myself web programming when I was 12, like HTML, CSS, JavaScript. So I've been a big fan of the web and how that can really help empower a lot of different things that couldn't exist without such a thing. So I've been interested in the domain-driven design and event sourcing communities and how they let us represent our systems from a high level, from the business perspective, though. And I think that we can generate a lot of the code that we normally spend time doing by hand. And if we can develop software a lot faster, then we can either go more deeply into the product or spend more time building the tools that let us build faster. So it's a cool cycle. So, yep. Oh, also, so I have a side project, which is a social annotation platform for PDFs and videos. So it seems like we're hitting a point where Slack isn't the best place to discuss these things that we're talking about. So if you guys want to use that, let me know.
I believe it's Jonathan's turn in the list.
Sorry, zoned out there. So I'm Jonathan Edwards. I've been doing research in this area for a while now, probably longer than you guys. And I've done a bunch of experiments under the name of Subtext. I've also been spending a lot of time the last few years thinking at the meta level, which maybe Mark was mentioning, about the institutional problems that I think are actually the real heart of our problem and what changes we need to to make to our institutions, either fix them or route around them and create new ones to make progress. And I'm most interested in this conversation just to as getting data on where people are coming from, what they're doing, and what their needs are, and how new sorts of research or business institutions might be able to help us get into the future. I guess I'll leave it at that.
Didn't know that about you. I'd like to hear more about that later.
Sure.
Hi, I'm Paul. Sorry, I couldn't get my camera to work. But yeah, I'm studying computer science in Germany, and I've stumbled upon the whole future of programming topic through Brad Victor's Future of Programming essay, I think. And I've been doing my own projects for a while, kind of related to making programming more accessible to people, but it was always kind of isolated, working on my own ideas. Like I did a small project called Robotopia, which was like teaching kids to program with virtual robots. And what I wanted to do more is kind of take a step back, or like look at what other people have tried and learn from that more, instead of just like coming up with an idea and building a prototype and then have some kind of result, but not really like having any continuation, like building on top of other people. More specifically, what I've been doing is I'm really fascinated by the Dynamic Land project of Brad Victor. And like for the first half of last year, I kind of like followed the project from far and like just tried to figure out what it's about without really knowing what it's really about. And I found this project called Paper Programs, which kind of implemented parts of Dynamic Land. Maybe for people who are not familiar with Dynamic Land, the idea is that you can program in your physical environment, and you I lost my train of thoughts. Yeah, so the idea is, or like they've built this prototype where you can program your physical environment, and all programs are physical. Everything is physical. So programs are pieces of paper which are tracked with cameras, and you can project things on top of it. And I found this paper program library which kind of implemented parts of the Dynamic Land, or what they have at Dynamic Land, and I kind of took that and tried to do my own experiments. Yeah, but what I'm hoping to get out of this meeting is kind of connecting more to people, because right now I feel oftentimes I'm like on my own little island and doing stuff without really like connecting to ideas other people had or things people tried out.
I guess I'm the last one. Hi everyone, I'm Daniel. I'm from Mexico City. I'm gonna be relocating to San Francisco soon, so it will be great to meet people there. I have been working as a web developer for 8 years now, but also as a teacher in different coding boot camps. So I started to more interested in how to teach programming to different people. I'm a visual learner, so I really like tools that make programming visual. So I built a data flow visual programming some time ago. It was harder than I thought, not used. But after that, I started a second project about programming language that is just plain English. It's cool, but I have I'm waiting for finding a cool problem to solve with it. The cool thing is it should read just like plain English, and the verbs are what methods we are using, and everything else in a sentence will be the parameters to the function. So that means that you can write code with different orders and add words that are not that important into code, so you don't have even keywords and that stuff. And I'm thinking of it that will read just like a book, so you will have kind of chapters and sections and have better ways to group the code, not just functions. There are the links if anyone is interested.
Okay, great. Well, thank you all. That was awesome. I'm glad we went through that. Okay, so I guess now we have between like 15 and 45 minutes to talk about the topics. I don't know how well the upvoting, the very low upvoting system is working. I guess we just kind of go down. I think I just want to put one thing out there before I let you guys kind of take it away a bit. The main thing I want to avoid is one person or like one or two people just talking a lot. I kind of want to hear a lot of voices. So just try and keep any one stream of talking that you do like under 30 seconds if you can, maybe a minute at the longest. So just keep that in mind. And if you're kind of going over it, I'll try and interject and like let someone else.
Yeah, I thought we could talk shortly here, and then later let's like have lots more meetups where we can go into in depth in some of our ideas, like one person's ideas, something like that.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Aiden and I have spoken about maybe doing a version of this where like two people get to present, and then maybe like it's a lottery. One random person gets to present at the end too, something like that. We think could be a good idea. If you have ideas like that, like meta ideas of how to make it better, at the bottom of the doc, like put those suggestions, because that'll be great. So we can do this again, and it'll be even better. Okay, so I guess I'll just unless anyone has any other idea, I'm just gonna like tee up the first topic. Does anyone have any other idea? Interject.
Well, I just want to say that I liked what Ellen said about like when you have to go deeper to understand how people form these institutions and like how they develop software, and that communications, let's say structure of communications forms the structure of software and several things. And when I try to understand how to create a better programming language, I realized that it really goes back to psychology and some other really deep things. It's really interesting and hard, and I really would love to hear anything from others about this topic.
There's a whole ecosystem. You can't just look at the coding in isolation, or even the way you do the coding in isolation. And we've heard quite a few different elements that you need to worry about: the psychology, the communication, but also institutions, funding, infrastructure, and getting the best things or good enough things in place. It is the more we can do that, the better it'll be. But there are, yes, I agree that it's not just the language itself.
I think there's sort of two approaches that people have taken to this. In like the 70s and the 80s, when a lot of this was very young, you could like reasonably create a new language and say like, oh, this thing's called Java, everyone should use it. And like that doesn't really happen as much anymore. It still does to some extent, but it's much more rare, especially like at a global institutional level. And the other thing I've seen that works really well is people who find ways to sort of bolt on to the existing systems that people are already using, whether it's like the projectional editors, like Light Table and what they were trying to do, or like more complicated development tools that people have built that sort of work with what's already there. And I don't know like for sure which one is the better approach, but it seems like the ones that get more adoption are bolting on to legacy.
People are very loath to throw away and do a completely greenfield site. There are far, far more brownfield sites. And I mean, I could probably talk for my country on why that's the case, but it certainly is the case. And going, I don't want to touch that. I want to do something. I only want to use nice, shiny new stuff. Isn't the real world, nice though it might be.
That's part of why I'm really interested in interoperability.
So I'm just gonna direct us. I like this conversation. I just want to direct us to like the topic that's at the top. And it's basically, you can read the whole thing. I think it's a little piece of text. It's basically about collaboration, how programming is, the way it's done now is very personal. And I agree with this a lot. I'd be interested to get someone who has a contrarian take on this, because there are very large teams that collaborate on software through Git or other version control systems reasonably successfully. So maybe it isn't as bad as I and whoever wrote this thinks. And yeah, and we've done a little bit of talking about this in the doc already. So I guess you can see that. But if anyone wants to start this conversation, go for it.
I've always wanted to do pair programming, but never had the chance. Oh.
So
has anybody done any pair programming or extreme programming? Deafening silence.
Yeah. Oh, I have.
And
yeah, in my experience, I value it really highly. There's so many benefits from doing it. First, like you both learn from each other. You iterate more quickly, and you're more likely to not only iterate on the code, but iterate on your understanding of the problem that you're actually trying to solve.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and like especially from the DDD community, the ubiquitous language concept is key to it, right? Like everybody needs to have some subset of the same understanding of the system, and working together directly with somebody is one of the more efficient ways to uncover the differences in your mental models, rather than, I code things and then it's your turn to review it. Then you have to reconcile what I made with your mental model. And it's a much quicker feedback loop.
The whole, I mean, that's bringing in the communication aspect, as well as the common understanding, and it ends up being better than the sum of its parts.
Right.
You quite often catch things faster. The sort of, I mean, it doesn't count as pair programming because I haven't been coding, but quite often I've had very productive sessions with a coder, talking to them backwards and forwards, so that their understanding of the problem domain is richer, and my understanding of what is and isn't possible as a technical solution is also richer, and you get through it much faster. But I suspect, Steve, you didn't have a particularly pair programming in mind. You had a more distributed, open source, lots of people. That's more what you were thinking. Is that right?
Yes, and I think it's related to who someone at the beginning was telling. I think David, was talking about how he wanted to contribute back to a language, but they didn't want his contribution, and that's kind of annoying. So the way I've been describing my own interest is, what would it look like if we had multi-level collaborations? Because Git, you just usually branch off with the main branch. But what if we could have really funky graphs where people have all sorts of weird forks of forks of forks of forks, and somehow it isn't crazy? I don't know. I'm wondering what it would look, because you have end user programming. If we win and we're able to do it, then we've almost created this bigger problem of managing all of the forks.
I like the idea of something called funky collaboration, rather than just two people, but funky collaboration. I think you should call it that officially.
Go ahead.
I was wondering if anyone else has the general sense that there's something difficult about collaboration, like it's not quite good enough yet. I don't know what it is.
It's rubbish, in my opinion.
It's pardon?
It's rubbish, but then you're asking the wrong people to heap praise on Git, probably.
Git
I
is
think
the solution. Git isn't. Git is the tool, not the end game. I mean, you said collaboration is rubbish. Do you mean that the way we're doing it at the moment is rubbish, or do you mean no? Doing it on your own is better, cleaner, cheaper, better for the planet. I'm supposed to stay off politics. Sorry.
Well, from Alex's perspective, what because I'm only a product owner, I have not created a language. Well, aside from designing this spreadsheet language, from our engineers, and we are approaching 30 engineers, they sometimes do paired programming, and what I observe from the outside is that if there's a concrete and quick deliverable, then paired programming works super well because they're not disincentivized to try out multiple approaches, and they do start by designing multiple approaches, and both of the engineers, of the 3 engineers, actually try them all and discuss them. When it's a big project, like we are actually doing a big refactor of our backend engine, and they are doing it in pairs, I actually observe that collaboration is maybe a bad idea, because I actually see that there's less flow of ideas. They do tend to agree a lot on theoretical aspects that sometimes is perhaps are insufficient to approach from a theoretical perspective. And then they just make too many assumptions as a collaboration is. Then when they get to coding, there's already a mutually agreed path to go forward. And so I have seen that small collaborations for small things and small chunks of code and small deliverables actually produce far better results and more colorful results, more fuzzy and funky results than if it's a large project. When it's a large project, people just tend to want to agree quickly on an approach, and many people actually create this democracy problem of maybe not the best option goes out there, but most feasible or the most agreeable or the one with the least attrition points between all of the opinions.
That's a really interesting point, and I think I've observed that kind of thing in like clients of ours, and also in teams I've also run. And I almost feel like the goal shouldn't be to make collaboration easier, but to reduce the need for collaboration. Because the communication cost is actually like the highest thing that most teams go into. It's one of the reasons why people just like roll over and say, "Oh, we'll do it that way," because like they just don't want to have another 4 hours talking about it. But I have this like theory that like if you get like really good developers, like you have 3 or 4 really good developers who are working together, they can do amazing things. That's like what startups have as their advantage. The reason why large companies introduce this communication problem is because there's also a lot of risk to have one person who runs the entire system that does this mission critical thing. So like I would argue very strongly that the best team for most things is the smallest number of people possible doing the most segmented and compartmentalized work they can. But you know, when you get into the real world, it doesn't work because you have to swallow a huge amount of institutional risk that happens. So collaboration sucks because people are covering the downside.
What do we mean by collaboration? Do we have a common understanding of what we mean?
Maybe it means scaling the solution on several people, like not single, not 2, but 100.
Yep.
Well, isn't that back to the mythical man month? It takes 9 months for a woman to have a baby. Therefore, it takes 9 women 1 month. As in, it doesn't.
Well, as Alan said, it's also a problem of sustainability, right? If a team is scaling fast, then you want to disseminate code and practices and all of those I would say, rather sensitive and unusual approaches. For example, we have very compartmentalized, very small teams. What we do force as an institutional rule is that every single team has to at least review every person from every other team has to take a look at it and approve it. Because for us, the objective of collaboration is to ensure maximum sustainability in the long term, which is a rather selfish goal by the company and for the company, but which includes very positive things like education and learning for the new junior team members who actually want more responsibility and a bigger say in things.
But collaboration, the comment, the initial comment somebody made was effectively allowing a lot of people to work on something. Now, I think there's actually more to collaboration than that, because you could get a lot of people to work on something by dividing it up, 100 people into 100 things, and then you just have, we're back to the design decisions and software that somebody was mentioning, where your problem is dividing it up, but everybody's siloed. Is that all we mean? Is that all we mean by collaboration, or do we actually mean people working on the same, either the same problem or the same bit of something together or successively? Or I mean, if we're going to try and improve it, we probably ought to work out what it is we're going to try and improve.
Yeah, 100 people working on 100 disconnected things doesn't really feel like collaboration to me. I would define it as multiple people having a shared understanding of the same system and thus able to contribute to the same system.
I think that the issue is that different people have different areas of expertise. So someone might be less of a programmer, but they have very good knowledge of the domain of the business. So their input is valuable in with respect to the business. And so somehow we need to collaborate. I'm not sure, though, how programming could be changed to make collaboration more efficient.
Oh, I think, may I say something? If we think about like humans as strange CPUs with really slow memory, so they solve the problems and they try to scale it, but it doesn't scale because there are too many dependencies, and they dive up into abstractions of code. They switch to other parts of the system really slowly because they have to learn new things. And maybe if we change the abstractions and make it like more easy for that kind of memory that people have, maybe it will be more scalable and in this sense more effective. So I think there might be a technical solution in the in the foundation of abstractions that may really help.
So I find it interesting. I'm sorry, go for it, David.
I think that somehow we need to write programs that are closer to the problem domain, and I think that probably a lot of us recognize that on some level already. You know, and declarative programming is, for example, very helpful to that end, and it also helps you shorten your code size. And perhaps if we programmed more like that, closer to the domain that we're working with, then it would sort of naturally become easier for the programmer to communicate with the less technical people because they think a little bit more like the non-technical people.
And vice versa.
From my point of view, the way that we've enabled large-scale collaboration on a project has been by design. It's in the architecture. It's you design a plugin interface, you design a middleware interface or something like this. It gives very clear contract for many members of the team to work in parallel on different features. So I think it's interesting that we talk about future of coding, but my interest has always been in design. It hasn't been in the language. It's almost immaterial. It's the wrong level of abstraction for the things I care about. It's how you design the high-level architecture, and that maps to, I think, what Alan was saying about your organization, because I think it very much does. You know, you design for building as well as for the end product, and that means you take into account who you are and what you've got. The other thing I'd just like to add is when we talk about coding, my big problem with the premise of the question is I don't think all coding is the same. In fact, it's radically different. And when I've moved from one domain to another, say highly mathematical simulations, moving on to prototype code, then to a mature product, and then to a very visual, user-oriented product, if I take the intuitions from one domain and try and apply them to another, say defensive programming, I work in the wrong way. You know? So if I've tried to go from a highly iterative, from a visual product, which I'm wanting to iterate quickly, I'm moving to a simulation where one slight bug could have an unknown effect only visible hours after you've let it run. The two different programming approaches are so different, and my collaboration with my team is so different, if it's mathematical, or if it's design heavy, or if it's if there's a spec, or if it's uncertain. I always feel it's like saying we're talking about how to write, and one person might be writing an epic novel, and another person might be writing, jokes for a best man speech or something. It's all writing, but the technique, the problem, the approach, they're so different. We would be better to know what the writing was before wondering about the collaboration or the languages or the abstractions.
Yes, I also think that collaboration becomes a problem with, as Tim was saying, of the bigger teams. If you see, as in basic human needs, different collaboration started to appear as needs became more structured. So the basic setting which you need for a village is language, and then once you're trading with multiple partners, then you need money, and then money avoids you having to remember a set of transactions for how many bread does a fish cost, and keeping all these end-to-end problems, and those already exist for coding as well, right? So there's common languages and there's common protocol and processes. I think that the level of social experimentation of collaboration that's happened in companies and in society starting in the 18th, 19th, and 20th century happens when you have very large groups of people. And so in coding, if you consider open source projects with thousands of people, then those already have those problems. But otherwise, I think that it's mostly an efficiency problem, like beyond the natural collaboration. Furthering is probably a problem for very large organizations, because otherwise people can just pick up a pen and a whiteboard, and that is already collaboration, right? And maybe live collaboration, and there for sure must be more efficient ways of doing it, but those experiments can only be conducted at, I imagine, at larger organizations where the need exists for that, because there's companies that don't really need IT systems, right? They can work very well in paper and pencil. And so there's probably also engineering teams of 2 and 3 and 5 people who really don't need collaborative features at all. They can just offline sync.
I thought the analogy, Duncan, your analogy of different types of writing, so the difference between tweets and novels and a factual newspaper article, is absolutely right, that there's the solution, the design, that what you need has different constraints. So yes, that the language and a choice of language will or should be influenced by that. I'm interested because it sort of sounds that we're almost saying that we'd prefer to avoid collaboration at the code level because that introduces inefficiency and complexity. And that's one thing we're saying. But the other thing is open source is, by its very nature, is going to have loads of people working on it, and there needs to be a mechanism to support that. So I'm not quite sure where we've ended up on collaboration.
I'm going to just jump in and maybe give everyone, anyone who has a final note on this, an opportunity to do that, and then maybe go to the next topic. And I'd prefer to hear from someone who hasn't spoken about this topic, but has something that they want to add.
Yeah, I can say something shortly. So it seems like there's a lot of discussion about the how do a bunch of people work together, and that seems to be like almost entirely separate from actually like collaborating on a program per se, like on a single piece of software. It's more like people building a software system together. So I'm wondering if there's something missing from how a small group of people in a room work together as opposed to how a small organization works together. So that's when it comes down to perhaps a bunch of software engineers in a room. And is there a need for better collaboration tools? Is there a software solution to the collaboration problem? Or is it more complex than that? I think that's where the original question was sort of aiming at as well. I don't have an answer. I'm just sort of trying to clarify where the lines are.
Cool. And I'd love to hear from Alan, not to like pick on Alan, but I'm very impressed by the ratio of the number of people who mentioned Alan's comments to the little that Alan spoke. So if you have something to add, I'd love to hear it.
Well, excuse me. I think that's a very deep topic, but there's part of it is there's fundamental limits to humans' ability to, or the way that they work in groups, groupthink that happens at different scales. So the more people just shut up and stand aside and don't contribute. There's also, I don't know, it seems to me like the industry has grown up where, you know, or maybe different in the open source community, but like most companies, you know, you work with a small team and you kind of build the whole product and maybe use some components from other people. But I'd like to see a different structure in the industry where money flows through groups of small teams to help fund building sort of underlying constructs, and then these people that maybe, you know, analysts or what build on top of that. Yeah, it's a whole different subject, but yeah, I think it comes down to things like, you know, how can we get people understanding the same constructs? And like someone was saying, you know, when I say communication, you know, what does that mean to you? Sharing a shared understanding of what things are. It's a hard problem. I mean, I think, yeah, I think the human brain is very focused on visuals. I know we all work in text, but I think, you know, my efforts are in VR where, for example, like you could, in theory, have a concert with, you know, a very famous band, and you could have millions of people watching that from the front row if you're in virtual reality, because there's no physical constraints, right? So we could have 1,000 people sitting around a design, and the very expert in some particular aspect could chime in on one thing. You know, they could contribute their piece without having to necessarily be physically in the same space. And so I'm interested in what geography does, and if we can span geography and work together in close proximity, virtual proximity, what does that bring to the table of being able to pull in the people? Like at my company, someone says, oh, we're going to do FFmpeg. You know, well, the person who knows FFmpeg is the person who wrote it, right? And they're somewhere else physically. And how do we get that person involved in our project so that we can solve this one problem? Yeah, I can post a bug to the bug list or whatever and get some feedback over time. But there's no incentive, there's no monetary incentive to have them involved with us unless there's some contract, and that's high overhead. And just the way we work together needs to change, I think, personally.
Yeah, I think that's a really industry scale. Bring up. So because people, sorry, am I interrupting or? So people work best face to face. I don't think it's controversial, right? Like, as opposed to on the internet or on a Skype call. and programming isn't sort of really good at that, right? Because you program on a screen on a computer, and it's never been easy for a bunch of people to work together on a computer. Because, you know, apart from the fact that you can't cram 5 people to sit in front of a desk very easily, you know, at that point you've got multiple screens and you're starting to bring people away from each other. And the worst case, you're in different desks in different rooms, and collaboration on software is perhaps limited by the fact that software is trapped in a computer. And I think that's why it's pertinent that you bring up that VR gives you an opportunity to sort of humanize software again. So you can make software into a space, and then you can bring people into that space, and you can work together. And so, you know, this technology is actually becoming real now. In a few years, I don't know, like Microsoft, Apple, everyone's working on AR, VR. There could be a huge opportunity to explore that new space of collaboration with software and with other things as well, when people can come face to face again and work together, whether they're remote or whether they're just trying to escape sitting at a desk in front of a screen.
Just another comment on Alan's comment. There are actually two interesting companies working on some of the stuff you mentioned, especially regarding pay, if I understood correctly. So one of them is kind of like a bounty system that forces companies who use repos of small contributors to pay them. And it's actually a pretty successful model. They're distributing lots of money to those people who are just alone building a certain library or a certain piece of code. And another is a topic of blockchains, which is technically a foreign concept to me, at least in any deep way. And there's another company which basically goes to companies and proposes to them that they outsource a portion of their repos, and then there's a system for continued collaborations. Like if you make a big collaboration, then you earn some money, and then if you make a large one or multiple small ones, then you get like kind of like a time extended thing. So something like, okay, you're gonna get paid for the next 6 months. And so there's like some natural, people are experimenting with different sorts of distributed workforces, truly distributed. So people not affiliated with the company who can actually contribute and earn money. And this is also some form of collaboration. I don't know if this speaks to what you were mentioning as a problem, but I don't know the two companies right now, but I can actually send them to you.
So could I point out something? We've talked about collaboration on a project, and we've talked about collaboration on products, and we've noted how difficult those are. But what about collaboration in a field and us? How do people collaborate in coming up with new ideas? And this is a place that collaboration, research, science, collaboration is usually considered, the official narrative is that collaboration is essential. In fact, that it's almost impossible to make progress without some sort of collaborative process of people proposing ideas and other people reviewing them and critiquing them and so forth. Any comments on that?
I don't think I can do any of my ideas really well without somebody helping me, but I don't know.
I think one thing that crosses my mind about why it's difficult in this space as well to get collaboration is that there's the notion that a vision or a hopeful goal is crystal clear and something you can share with somebody. Whereas often, if it's a new idea, it's fuzzy and you can try and explain it to somebody and you'll fail horribly. So that even if I'd love to get somebody on board, say, hey, help me with this, and then try and explain what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So basically, we're like deaf and blind people describing an elephant. So there's something, and we're just get fuzzy ideas and share it, and hopefully get something together, like an elephant.
I feel like the the first thing that we as a community can probably do better is get like really clear on our definition of a problem. And I feel like that would probably be like a first step that opens the door to talk about solutions, and just it's really getting on that same wavelength. So and some people might disagree with what that problem is or might have a slightly different notion of it, but like having common terms is probably pretty important. If the source for that has been put together in the field officially among researchers, that is a good starting point, or if it's something that we should evolve on our own. But it seems like there's something to having that figured out.
I might push back on that a bit. The way a lot of research works is it's all about arguing about what the problem is, as much as the solutions to the problems. There's almost never agreement on what the problem is. You have lots of different problems, and any new approach is a new definition of the problem.
I think one view that's quite interesting is the different types of thinking. There's almost what Aidan was referring to, the sort of the convergent thinking of reducing possible solutions down to a goal, and it's called sort of managerial thinking. Then there's strategic thinking, the notion of generating possible solutions to reach a goal. And then there's what's sometimes called entrepreneurial thinking or effectual thinking, which is looking at what you can do and then discovering the goals that you can do with those things. So and I think that's part of the problem in the creative free thinking space, is that people are quite flexible about the nature of the goals and the problem they're trying to solve. They're sort of looking for opportunities almost.
Couldn't agree more.
I think we like to think of ourselves as being logical and neat and structured, but life isn't like that. Life is messy, and sometimes what you end up doing, or the useful thing you create, is not what you expected. People use it for something other than the thing you had in mind. So being flexible, as you said, Duncan, and almost using all of those approaches and seeing what goals you come up with as a result of that, and then heading in that direction, but being prepared to adjust as people use or don't use whatever it is you've come up with. I also think that the research approach of talking about a problem is slightly different from the approach that you'll have in a company that is trying to build something. In that you do need to get agreement as to, at the very least, what you're going to do next, and to be as clear as you can be to deal with the overheads of communication, of all the other things we've talked about. So I think there's maybe a difference of emphasis there.
So
you were trying to wrap this up.
Yeah, no worries. This was great. I liked what this one. I just want to give Mark a topic for maybe like 10 minutes, and then we'll sign off. Did you have something you want to say, Mark?
Yeah, I just want to say I think it's actually a really interesting area. I'm glad that it was flagged. And I think it's notable that we've perhaps underinvested or kind of under-examined this question, and as a consequence have like sleptwalk as an industry down some unfortunate path-dependent histories. And the flip side of that, I think there's a lot of potential in terms of building community and building the profession up that we could do if we invested more in it. So it's part of the reason I'm excited about efforts like this to bring people together.
Great note to end on. And then the next topic, we don't have many upvotes, so I just kind of picked one with 2 upvotes. That's the next number. I'm just going to do dynamic land. I thought that's a particularly good topic for discussion as opposed to other topics maybe. It's kind of broad. So I thought the way we could do this is, I think some of us have been there and have things to say, but others haven't. So I thought maybe if you have a question about it, or something like that, you can ask a question or two, and the rest of us will kind of try to clarify things. Someone with a question about dynamic land.
What is dynamic land?
Someone else want to take that?
Well,
Answering what I read on the internet, you want someone who's been there, right?
Has anyone else been there about me? That's all? No? Oh, okay.
I've been there, but I think you'll do a better job explaining it. I don't feel comfortable like explaining it. It's really hard.
Okay. Well, I think the simplest way to explain it, because I agree, it's really hard, is that they're rejecting VR but trying to accomplish a lot of the same things. So they're trying to build a computational medium in physical space. So you think the same way that lights in the ceiling are like a electronic lighting medium, but it's like part of our infrastructure. It's really the same with computing. So like the table has computations being run, and there's code that's being read by cameras on the ceiling, and then the result of that code being projected in real life. So we don't have to go into virtual reality to get computing as part of our environment. So any questions or thoughts about that? And I guess maybe Alan, if Alan has a thing on dynamic land, I'd be curious to hear about that.
Yeah, I've been reading as much as I can about it. It's actually not too far from me. I should actually go over and see if I can get in and have a session on it. So for my limited knowledge, it's what I'm most interested in is not so much the physical stuff. That's interesting because I think that's good for the way the brain processes information. There's nothing that says you can't take dynamic land into virtual reality and literally be doing that across the planet in theory. It's nice to be next to people as high fidelity as you can get. I'm interested in kind of how, like, he wrote dynamic land in like two boards worth of paper, right? And what does that look like? How does that how are two pieces of paper put next to each other suddenly working together? Like what's the mechanism? Is it like a concatenative language? What's the basic sort of computer science organization of that building block?
I think if I had 5 minutes to think about it, I'd think up of something. I'd think up some kind of design. But then I would think to myself, wait, how can I actually implement this? I would need sensors. I would need to like put hooks in the operating system. Maybe the operating system, if we're using Android or something, maybe it doesn't support that. And then I'd have to get like buy-in from Google or something. I don't know. Or maybe it is not that hard.
I think the answer is it's a tuple space. It's just like Lynda. It's a tuple space. It's a database of requests, and it has somewhat of an inference engine there for you can query it. So you're posting every sheet gets posted up there as a resource, and programs can query it, and it's a tuple space basically.
Mm-hmm.
And
there's like a distance query too, isn't there, or something? Like physical distance.
Sorry. I don't know about the distance query. I just want to do a quick shout out to Omar Rizwan. I just put a link to it in the doc. If you want to know the low level details of how it works, he does a great job of that. So that's the thing sharing for you.
Okay, so my question is the two-page or two-whiteboard operating system actually practical, or is it designed to be so minimal that it's not going to generalize to a useful software system? Like, is it a novelty that it's on two whiteboards?
I think it depends on who you ask, but I think what they're trying to do is, are you guys familiar with the Alan K. Steps project? Some of you are. I think they're trying to do that sort of thing where they like leverage doing specific languages and like other wacky techniques to really condense and shorten the number of lines of code you need to get stuff done. That's one of the points they make. Yeah. Anyways, I have a podcast with Glenn, with Omar. I think my podcast with Omar, we talk about this. Because I'm like, anyways, he and I disagree about that. I'm like, well, you know, the code's eventually going to get large, and you need to solve things around that. He's like, no. If we're small enough, the code will never actually get large. So, I don't know if that answers your question.
I think it's I had an interesting experience. I'm not sure about like how well it will scale if you build something more complex. But one thing I found really interesting was so if you want to do if you want to figure out how to do something, it's really interesting to get like a broad overview of the code, because it's like the pages are grouped in different categories. Like this part of the whiteboard does the rendering, this does sound, or this does the runtime of the programs. And it's really interesting to like scan the whiteboard. I found it a really interesting way to browse code on a high level that is very different if you have like a repository of files. You, of course, you can sort for keywords or like, but otherwise, other than that, you have to go like into folders and look at different files. There it was really interesting to have it physical as a whiteboard to get a quick overview and dig into the code directly. That was one thing I found interesting about having the code on a whiteboard.
I'd be really interested in a hobby version of Dynamic Land. You know, one projector, Raspberry Pi, stick it on a whiteboard. I know he hasn't released any code, has he, yet?
I think someone
else has released a copy of it. Yeah. They
Yeah,
made up their own version.
Yeah, someone mentioned. So the person who made it is called. His name is Jan Paul. We met at a hackathon a few years ago. He's wonderful. So I'd recommend checking out all of Jan Paul's work, and in particular, Paper Programs by Jan Paul is the open source Dynamic Land. And he did get their approval to release it. One thing that, you know, like insider knowledge to just put out there is, yeah, the team at Dynamic Land, they have like mixed feelings about it, because it's nice that you know, people are interested enough to like build their own version, but it's also like Brett Victor's constant struggle is he's like, what I'm building, my prototypes aren't about the technology, they're about the ideas, and like you're missing the point if you think it's about this projector and camera thing. I don't mean to sound I don't know, elitist. I guess that's kind of the nature of that sentiment. But anyways, there is a Paper Programs out there that you can play with and get a feel. And there are a lot of videos. I'd recommend watching videos. Anyways, I didn't mean for this to be like everyone asks questions of the three of you who know about Dynamic Land. I thought there'd be more shared knowledge of it. Maybe just one other topic for like 10 minutes and then end, unless anyone else has an idea. I want someone who I haven't heard from a lot to suggest a topic. Paul, I haven't heard a lot from Paul. Did you want to suggest the final topic, or do you want to throw it, or if you don't want to, throw somebody else?
Yeah, I think mostly like I'm interested in Dynamic Land, but I don't know that much sense to talk about or like to discuss it if people are not that familiar with. Maybe just like one final comment about it, like one thing I went there, it was really kind of this magical experience of getting there and like discovering all these different kinds of things. But one thing that kind of like didn't, or like I'm a little bit unsure about, is that it's like very code centric. So like idea is, or like one big is that they say like everything is modifiable and you can look into everything, like how something works, because like on like each program is a piece of paper and source code is always printed on the page, so you can like just pick up the paper and like read the source code. But that is only true in some sense, because like people don't know code, like it doesn't really help them, and maybe even discourages them to like touch the system, because like there's all this cryptic code printed on it, and I don't know anything about the code. I mean, it's like the claims and wishes system is like it's less or like it tries to be more friendly, but it's still like you basically need to learn programming to really understand it and to really build things with it. Yeah.
I'm not sure if there's a way around that though, right? Fundamentally, like you always have to go back to code or something that is essentially code. Like people who've tried to erase code by offering visual programming alternative, it's still like code, but with costume on. I think that's sort of an essential problem that can never really be gotten around.
Yeah. I guess that's true. Like to get a real power, you need code, but I'm not so sure about like getting people into it, or making it more like that you can like learn a small thing, and then like as your knowledge grows about the system, that you get more power. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think that comes down to language design, right? Which is perhaps something that they haven't really focused on too much at Dynamic Land. It seems to be more about the greater features of it than the actual programming language itself. I think they all need to fit together in a certain way for that to be possible. You're muted, Steve, I think.
Steve, you're off.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So I think we could keep going, but I'm going to just wrap up here because it's been a while. I think one thing I just want to just ask is if you made a comment, if you could just put your name in parentheses by it, so we know who to thank if you share a link or something, if you want, that's great. And yeah, if you have ideas for making it better, put them down in the bottom, and maybe we'll do another one of these. It's fun to experiment with community things, so I'm open to all ideas. Any other final notes from anyone?
Thanks for setting it up, Steve.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks
Keep
for
working
the
on cool stuff, everyone.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Alrighty, have a good night or day or whatever time zone you're in. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Nice.
Good, Steve. Nice.